Say hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
This is Amaya, my youngest. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
See you later. Hi guys, it's Dion and Happy New Year 2021. Oh my god, you have got to be better. So this is not a podcast. This isn't a video talking about social injustice, which you know kind of dominates my blog. This is something that is a lot more personal. I've been wanting to do this video for years, but there was just always something that stopped me. So anybody who knows me, anyone who has followed me will know that my eldest daughter was diagnosed with cancer when she was 1 year old, and at the end of last year we have a new challenge with her battle, but I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But the kind of purpose of this video is to talk to people about childhood cancer. I mean, I don't know why. I find it hard because I still find it hard that she has that, and she has spent the last 3.5 years being poked and prodded and tested. And I've had quite a few parents who have over the years asked me kind of basic questions like, what happened? How did we know? How did we spot it? How was she diagnosed? What did her journey look like? Did she have chemotherapy? How did she cope? Why she still got hair? Lots and lots and lots of questions, and I have always answered them on a personal level, but I feel a lot more obligated now to tell Adaellah's story, but also just to help parents to understand what childhood cancer is, and to recognise and identify symptoms, which is friggin' hard, by the way, so hard. But in a world where we are not seeing our healthcare professionals face to face, I mean, I haven't had a face-to-face GP appointment in now over a year, and it's so easy for things to be missed in this way. And we're being really efficient, and technology has accelerated, and we're doing so much more than we ever thought we could do. But at the same time, there are pros and there are cons to everything, and I do not want our children to be a con of what our new normal is. So I'll kind of just get straight to it. So Adaellah is 4.5 years old. She was born in May of 2016. I had a normal pregnancy. I was very sick throughout my pregnancy, 24/7 nausea, just like a 9-month hangover. And when I was young, I used to go in. So think about your worst hangover and it never goes away. That was what the 9 months was, but it signified a really healthy pregnancy. So it wasn't anything that anyone was worried about. Her scans were fine. She was born with no problems. Water birth, really quick, 6 hours, she was out. Just because some of the kind of initial experiences I had with her in a hospital, and being a first time mum, I was very vigilant of everything that was going on with her. And one of the things I noticed quite early, and she must have been less than a week old, but when she did have a bath, I remember looking at her tummy thinking, your tummy is quite big. And I mean, it wasn't massive, but it was like stretched, it was tight. I could see the veins under her skin, and it just didn't seem right to me. So I actually picked up the phone to one of my best friends, Brenda, and I said to Brenda, can you have a look at this? 'Cause I took pictures. Can you have a look at this picture? Does Adaellah's tummy seem normal? And Brenda's like, yeah, it looks normal. my kids have got really big tummies, and you know, babies have big tummies when they're born and stuff. So that gave me a lot of comfort. I was very comfortable that what I had picked up on was nothing serious. She wasn't showing any signs of discomfort or anything abnormal. She, you know, she fed fine. She pooed fine. She pooed loads. Those baby explosions, I know any mother knows exactly what I'm talking about. And she was moving her limbs, and she was gurgling, and she was just the cutest little thing in the world. So, you know, I just thought, okay, cool, I'm just being a new mum who just doesn't really completely know what's normal and what's not normal. So that was fine. You know, she was a very good child. She slept well, like I said, she fed well. But, you know, people who say to me, oh, you know, how is it being a mum? And I'm like, I absolutely love being a mum. My daughter is perfect. But the only challenge that we had in her first year of life was she just didn't like to eat. And you know, I breastfed both my children till quite late, so I always know that breastfed children don't always transition onto solid food easily. You know, they kind of fight against it. They just prefer to be breastfed. So that challenge, I thought, just was part of that process that seemed to be, again, quite normal. But I mean, she really didn't like eating. You know, I think she finally got to solids at around 8 months, but I was trying to wean her from maybe about 6 months. And you know, by the time it got to 8 months, I was like, you know, it's my partner, babe, we have to do something about this. So I actually had to like physically like hold her and stuff food down her throat just so that she ate. And you know, it was obviously it was kind of like homemade baby food, so it was all kind of blended, so I wasn't like stuffing solid things down her throat. But it was awful, because to kind of watch my child struggle to eat, and then there didn't seem to be any kind of purpose behind that resistance from her. And like, I spoke to the health visitor about it, and her GP, the doctor, about it, and they're just like, you know, this is just normal, you know, she'll kind of get it, don't worry, kids don't really need to like kind of be consistently on solid food till they're over 1. So she's breastfeeding, she's healthy. So again, so I kind of thought, okay, cool, that's fine. But still, it didn't quite sit right to me. And again, how can it sit right when half the time you're sitting down stuffing food down someone's throat? It wasn't a nice experience for me, and it definitely wasn't a nice experience for her. But it just became part of our norm. And yes, actually, the other thing that was really quite strange and didn't sit right with me was every single time Adaellah would breastfeed, maybe about 15 seconds after she finished, she would literally have an unbelievable amount of vomit. And you know, the doctor said it's positing, she's just positing. I'm like, this isn't positing, this is vomiting. You know, I'd have to always have about minimum 20 muslin cloths ready for the day. And I'm not exaggerating, because Adaellah was breastfed on demand, so she could have fed about 50 times in a day. I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but that's how it felt sometimes. But after every single feed, she vomited. Something that just wasn't, I just felt uneasy. But the whole first time mum thing just makes you feel as though you're being a hypochondriac. And that's one of the main things I want to get across in this video. You're not being a hypochondriac, you are being an intuitive mother, and you are going to know what's right and what's wrong, what's normal and what's not. Babies are little humans, and I think we can kind of make a judgment about what we expect and what we think our children should be doing, what our children should be just eating, all of these things. Like, you know, you just because you're a mum and you apparently don't know, you're not going to find your answers in a book. You're going to find your answers in your child. But yeah, where was I? Anyway, yeah. So she just for a child who didn't like to eat, Adaellah still had a big tummy, and she just kept this big tummy as just part of her physique. And you know, I look around and I think actually quite a few kids have a big tummy, but she doesn't eat, so why does she have a big tummy? So I took her to the GP once, and it was about something else, but I mentioned it, and the GP was like, oh, you know, kids, they all have big tummies, their muscles haven't fused together, so when they eat, then their tummy expands, and then you can see it. And so I was like, okay, all right. So she's here in the GP, and if the GP's not concerned about her tummy, then maybe there isn't anything that I need to worry about. So I'm just going to kind of fast forward to just before her first birthday. So we were planning a big birthday party for Adaellah for her first birthday. There was so much going into the planning of her first birthday party, but around the time where she was due to turn 1, I just started to notice that she seemed a bit uneasy, but you know, she was just such a happy child that it wouldn't really last for long. So sometimes she'd be playing and she would just wince. It was like a thing, and I'll be like, are you all right, Adaellah? And she would just carry on, but you know, she was wincing. And I remember, you know, the pressure of the party and all that stuff, and I was, you know, doing a party bag. I wanted Adella's dad to just pull his finger out and help me, and being the emotional Cancerian that I was, you know, I said, you know what, I'm not sleeping in bed today, and you can look after Adaellah tonight. And you know, because at that point Adella's still kind of breastfed through the night, but I was just feeling so emotional and so tired that I was like, you know what, I'm having a night off. Yeah, I haven't had a full night's sleep in nearly a year. You can look after the child today. So I went into the spare bedroom and I slept, and my partner and Adaellah slept in our bed. But in the morning my breasts were just swollen. I was like, you know, I need to go and get the baby. So I went to get the baby, and she was basically on fire. Her body was so hot, her skin was so pink, and I was like, oh my god, like, what's wrong? You know, did you cover her? And he was like, no, you know, I've been trying to cool her down. He was too afraid to come and wake me up after my previous night's moaning. But I quickly like breastfed her, and I found that, you know, she looked like she was absolutely desperate for some type of fluid, and she never drank from a bottle, so she would refuse to take the water her dad was trying to give to her. And you know, she breastfed for about 2 hours straight, and I was like, oh my god, what is wrong with my child? This is Friday morning. You know, that seemed to help with the temperature, and her temperature came down a bit, but again she was still a little bit ratty, and I thought, oh gosh, you know, I think she's kind of catching something, you know, just before her birthday. And yeah, so she was still kind of really tired that day, and she went down for a nap quite late. She went down about 4 for a nap, which is again quite unusual, but again she was kind of in and out of sleep throughout the day, so the routine was just all messed up. And it got to like 6 o'clock and she was still sleeping, and her naps were around 2 hours, and it got to 7 o'clock and she was still sleeping, and it got to 8 o'clock and she was still sleeping. So I was starting to get really worried. So it got to about 8 o'clock and I was like, this is not right at all. So I woke her up, and I thought, again, my breasts were quite engorged. I thought, let me at least feed her. And you know, there had been times that she had slept from like 5 o'clock all the way to the next morning, so I didn't think it was so abnormal, but she usually wakes up for a feed at least, even if she's gonna go back to sleep. So I fed her, and that projectile vomit from that day, I will never ever forget it in my life. It was like, I don't know where all of this liquid came from, but she just puked up everywhere. And then she just started to kind of gasp for air. She really started to struggle to breathe. It was like really kind of short breaths, like and like I went into the biggest panic, and we were calling for an ambulance, and this whole time Adaellah was like I can't reenact it. I don't know how long it took for the ambulance to come. I don't think it was that long, but they came. They immediately gave her oxygen, which relieved her instantly, and we were blue lighted to King's College Hospital, and we were taken straight into the recess area, but luckily she hadn't fallen unconscious, so she didn't have to be resuscitated, so she just continued on with the oxygen. And I remember all these doctors surrounded us, and when they saw that she was breathing, it was almost like, what's the big deal? Yeah, they kind of just skedaddled, and there was just kind of one doctor there who was just like, oh, I think she's fine. But that same doctor said to me, have you noticed that your daughter has a distended tummy? And I was like, yes, I do notice that she's got a distended tummy. Like, I've been saying this. And she just said, okay, well, keep an eye on it. And kind of left it like that. And unfortunately, a baby had come in shortly after us, but this baby wasn't breathing, so all of the resources in the recess department went to look after this baby, and rightly so. So we then went into a room, I think this was around 11 p.m, and we weren't seen until 7:30 in the morning, to which they then diagnosed Adaellah with bronchiolitis, which was insane to me because she didn't have a cough at all. She was struggling to breathe, and she had this distended tummy. So how they landed on bronchiolitis, I have no idea. Anyway, they sent us home. She seemed a bit better, again, not completely herself. I just didn't feel comfortable. But anyway, that was Saturday. We returned from the hospital. Sunday was the day of her party. We had the party. She was very close to me, my mum, and my partner. She didn't really want to socialise. She didn't really want to talk, and we kind of understood that, and just kind of protected her space and her peace. If I could go back, I would have cancelled the party. But again, she didn't have a bad time at all. But it was just, I didn't enjoy the party because I just had this burning feeling that there was something wrong with my child, and I almost wanted to get all of the distractions off of my mental so that I could myself try and figure out what the hell was going on. Anyway, we had a brilliant time for her first birthday party, and I'm glad we've got some memories, and and then on the Monday she was fine. So anyway, her birthday comes Tuesday, wakes up feeling fine. I was I thought, oh god, I was just over exaggerating. She's fine, happy birthday. She opened a present, she had a one balloon. I got it was such a lovely kind of morning, and early afternoon I had some friends over who brought their kids, and we sang happy birthday and all that stuff. Anyway, Adaellah went down for a nap about 2 o'clock, and she woke up at 4, but when she woke up she was screaming her head off, and I mean screaming her head off. And so when Adaellah was born, I didn't mention this, she also had an umbilical hernia. So what an umbilical hernia is, basically your belly button kind of pops out, and it usually corrects itself, so there isn't anything to do about it. And actually, some people will have an umbilical hernia for their whole life, and people will call it an outie, kind of whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't anything serious. But Adaellah's had subsided, and then on that day, when she was screaming, crying, my God, the umbilical hernia popped straight back out, and her tummy was rock solid, literally like cement, and I could see all the veins, and I was like, oh my God, what is going on? So I called up 111. They said go to St Thomas's urgent care centre. We got to St Thomas's urgent care centre. They said they were full to capacity, so I've got to go to St Thomas's. And by this time it had to be about 6-7 o'clock, and I was like, my poor baby. I took her to St Thomas's hospital, and as soon as we arrived, and we went to the kind of triage section, and I spoke to the nurse. She took the details, and then we were seen pretty quickly by a doctor, and I say they because it was more than one doctor who came in. They took a real interest in Adaellah's tummy. And then when you take your child to the hospital, the doctor, there's nothing in your mind that would ever think that your child has cancer. So regardless of everything that's going on around you, that when I look back retrospectively now, I should have known that there was something kind of big happening. It just didn't, I just didn't, like, at the time, kind of clock. I didn't realise that there was a really big issue there. So they were checking her tummy, and I'm thinking all of this is to do with the umbilical hernia. So we were seen really fast, from one doctor to another doctor, and the ultrasound kind of department was closed by the time they decided that they wanted to scan her, and they had reopened it for her. And I was like, wow, Adaellah, like, you're so special, like, they must know it's your birthday. They're not sending us home and telling us to wait for an appointment in the post like we were used to. They're gonna check you out right now. So I'm positive about this, thinking, oh, she's gonna get this hernia sorted out, and we're gonna go home and everything's gonna be okay. And so we went to this ultrasound room, and it was, all I remember is it's just everything was a bit dark, and I don't know why. I suppose it could have been really late by now, but even in the room everything was just dark, and I don't know whether it's my memory or it's reality. It was obviously ended up being a dark time, so I don't know whether that's why my brain has kind of memorized it in that fashion. But he scanned her tummy, and it just felt like it was just silent. We were just silent for what felt like forever. And he said, okay, just to tell you, there is a mass in your daughter's tummy. And I was like, there's a what? There's a mass. What are you talking about? Are there numbers? Like, obviously I heard mass, but then I thought he has to be talking about maths, because it can't be a mass. And he was like, no, there's, we found like a lump. And like, straight away I was like, are you talking about cancer? And he's like, oh, I don't know what, I don't know, I can only see what's on this ultrasound. I'm going to give the results back to the doctor who's dealing with you, and then we can find out. And I just felt like my whole entire world like crumbled, because I was like, I don't understand what he means by mass. And so when we got back to A&E, the doctor came back and he was like, oh yeah, I've spoken to the radiologist, And yeah, he has found a lump in your daughter's abdomen. There could be a number of kind of reasons behind this lump, and he's kind of beating around the bush, and I kind of just cut him, and I was like, when you say lump and you're gonna investigate, is one of the possibilities cancer? And he was like, yeah. He then said it could be cancer. So they then said, we're going to admit you into the hospital, and we're going to do further tests on her tomorrow. Anyway, so we got up to the ward, and my partner, being the most intelligent person that I know, there was another doctor up there, and he tricked them. Clever bugger tricked them. He said, the doctor told us she's got cancer. What type of cancer are you thinking? And she was like, we do think it's probably neuroblastoma. And that was the first unofficial confirmation that we were dealing with cancer. So the next day, we saw a consultant who told us basically the same thing. We think she's got cancer. I sent her for an MRI and a CT scan and x-rays and all this stuff, and anyway, it came back that she had an ovarian teratoma, and what that basically is a tumour that's attached to her ovary. It's a germ cell tumour, and it ended up having something called a yolk sac tumour as part of it, which is the malignant element of it, because most teratomas are benign, but unfortunately for us, Adaellah's teratoma was malignant, and we just started the whole process of investigations, and it was a real tough time, but the reason why I wanted to go into the detail, because I just wanted to kind of demonstrate how easy it would be to overlook some of these things, and to put that notion that you are naive as a first time mum, or as a new mum, or even just a mum in general, because if you have new experiences with your second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever child, it's still a new experience. Like, it's what it is. Your children are not the same, my children are not the same, so just follow your gut completely. So throughout the point of Adaellah was able to get away with not having chemotherapy, because after several tests, her tumour was completely intact, and it was localised, and they thought we can just have a surgery and we can just kind of cut it out with the cold knife. And even with that, as soon as they kind of knew that it wasn't a metastatic type of cancer, they almost kind of became a little bit lax in, okay, cool, we'll kind of book her a surgery at some point. Oh, you guys go home and have a great time, don't worry, we're going to sort it out. All the while, at that time, my 1-year-old was symptomatic. She wasn't eating, she was vomiting, she couldn't poo, and then she would have chronic diarrhea. Her tummy was getting larger, she was in pain, she couldn't sleep, and I was just like, I'm thankful you found a diagnosis, and I'm thankful that you think it's not a big deal, but you got to get this tumour out of her. And throughout the whole process, me and my partner were on it. We were on it with the doctors. Bang, 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 bang. Because they relaxed as soon as they had diagnosed her. And they just didn't see it as a medical emergency anymore. Whereas for us, having a symptomatic, unwell child, it was the biggest urgency that we'd ever had in our lives. So, we pushed on every occasion. So, our whole process was St Thomas's Hospital to Great Ormond Street Hospital, back to St Thomas's Hospital, then back home. When we got home, she was still ill. They still wanted to send us home after she was so ill. So I then took her in a taxi to Tooting, St George's Hospital, because by that time we knew that that's where she was going to have her surgery, and I was never going to stay home and watch my sick child suffer. I took my ass to Tooting, St George's Hospital, and they still wanted to send us home, and I was not having none of it. You may feel that as an individual you don't have any control, or you're gonna kind of rely on the direction and the decision making from the healthcare providers, but not in a bad way, because I think I'm so thankful for the NHS. I'm so thankful for every single doctor who helped Adaellah, but in reality our children are just a number. They're just a statistic. They can't become emotionally attached to a child that they can only see as a patient, and that was even just to protect their own sanity and their own mental well-being. So you're never going to have anyone who fights for your child how you fight for your child. So fight for your child. We ended up being admitted in St George's Hospital rather than returned home as they initially wanted. They were then going to do her surgery 2 weeks after that. We managed to get to do her surgery in a few days, and I'm so thankful for the registrar who came in and saw, because Adaellah was just such a happy child. So you know how children are. As soon as the doctor comes in, she was like, so they're looking like, this child's not sick. And as soon as they would walk out, she would just be withering in pain. Like, I actually had to record her in pain so that when the doctor came in and she wasn't doing the same thing, they could actually see that we weren't making this up. And it worked. So think about doing stuff like that. Evidence what you're experiencing so that no one is able to turn you away when your child needs medical assistance. So the registrar came in, and she happened to come in when Adaellah was in pain, and she said, we are not waiting until next week to do surgery on this child. We're taking her to theatre tomorrow. And that's what happened. They took her to theatre. They removed her tumour, and her tumour was nearly 1 kilogram. It was 10 centimetres by 12 centimetres. It was basically the whole of her tummy, and she was in surgery for about 4 hours. Her doctor was the most kindest doctor. His name was Zaid Mukhtar, and he showed us exactly kind of what happened in the surgery, and he was confident that he had removed 100% of her tumour, which I can't explain the relief. It was the first time I could breathe. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't going to lose my baby, and she was going to grow and just have everything that she deserved. And we try not to have any limits, because I just feel like it's a damn miracle that she's here. And that's why, again, I did this video, because it just wouldn't happen with Adaellah. What happened to Adaellah in terms of, from her diagnosis to her surgery, was 2 weeks. That is like the speed of light. was 2 weeks, and COVID is almost just opened the door for just death and destruction across the board. And like, yes, we've got, coming up 80,000 COVID deaths, but are we looking at the other deaths around us? Are we looking at the indirect deaths caused by COVID? We're not, because if we did look at that, we would be far more surprised and terrified. And that's a problem with this whole COVID situation. We are overlooking the death and the destruction that is happening outside of COVID-19. If what happened to Adaellah in 2017 was to have happened last year, right now, we wouldn't have that speed of care. We wouldn't have her potentially, because by the time her tumour reached the laboratory, it had ruptured, and she was so symptomatic, which told us that she was at the point of potentially really becoming irreversibly unwell from her cancer, and it could have become metastatic, and it was on the cusp of being stage 2. She wasn't like a fresh stage 1. It was everywhere in her abdomen. It luckily was just had a membrane around it to protect it, but one rupture, that's it. It was gonna touch every single one of her organs, and and when you have metastatic cancer like that, it's very, very difficult to get rid of it. And as a 1-year-old, would her body have been able to kind of cope with what would have been required for her to get completely and utterly better and cured and well? So just follow your instinct. If your child is not feeling well, COVID is a really mild kind of like illness and virus in children, and I know that there will be many children who would have had a really tough time with COVID, but overall, it for some reason it just doesn't seem to affect them as much as it does like adults and the kind of vulnerable and elderly. So I promise you, it's worth the risk to take your child to get checked out. Don't bother with the GP. I love my GP, but when it comes to cancer, they're just they're the messenger. Just cut it out and go straight to the hospital, where they're able to kind of do diagnostic tests on your child, especially if the time is critical. Those first few days, that first week, they were just this test, that test, we were everywhere. And you know your child more than anyone in this world, and if anything feels out of sorts, if anything causes you concern, if your child is not their happy or unhappy normal self, whatever is normal for your child, if your child is not acting as they usually do, and you don't quite know the reason, but they might have little symptoms, because again, cancer mimics normal childhood illnesses: fever, cold, tiredness. Most of the time you're just going to think they're normal things, but usually, if I look back at my experience, there are other things that you can start linking up. Her tummy, her not eating, her not being well. When these things add up, the answer you get is potentially going to save your child's life. You're not a hypochondriac. I keep on saying that. You are not a hypochondriac. You are someone who cares about your child, and every single person, no matter whether they agree with how some parents they believe might be overprotective, they will do the same for their child. They will do the same for their child. So just don't worry about what other people are thinking. You know, just push for your child to be seen. And if you're not satisfied with what they've said, you can ask for a second opinion. You can take them back the next day. Just do what you need to make sure that your child is okay. And you know, like I said, you know, in December we've had some news about her cancer that obviously has been pretty difficult, but again, we're in good hands. You know, my partner and I, we have almost become experts in our own child's care, so we contribute to what the plan's going to be. We voice our concerns. You know, I have been kind of the go-between between the Royal Marsden, who look after her, and what our local hospital is, King's, because again, Adaellah has to have regular checkups. So, you know, nobody calls me to say this is when she has to have a blood test, this is when she has to have this, when she has, you know, you actually are in charge of that. And I actually don't mind, because you know, I'm on it when it comes to my child welfare, and most mums will be exactly the same. So yeah, just you are part of the care of your children. You need to follow your gut. You need to just do what you feel is necessary for the care of your child. I really, really do want every single mother to hold their babies tight, keep an eye on how they're doing, and if you are worried and concerned, get up and get to that hospital. Make sure that your child is seen to, and it's not fobbed off, and you're not feared into, you know, not reacting in a way that you would in a normal world without COVID. You know, go to an A&E. You know, like I said, 111. Yes, they're kind of fine, they're great, but they sent me to a hospital where it was full. What I learned from that experience is following what your own instincts are, and you know, hopefully it will be the right decision, and you will kind of get the care that you or your child needs. I'm going to wrap it up. I mean, Adaellah she's great in the sense of, you know, she is the strongest child I know. Her whole life has been spent in and out of hospital, and she still happily skips to the Royal Marsden and King's, and she just doesn't seem to be traumatized by her experience. That gives me so much strength to kind of carry on and be strong for her, and know that, you know, that's all that matters. That's who matters. As long as this child is living every single day the way she wants to, and happiness, and you know, that is, again, that's all we care about. So I'm gonna end it there, and I hope this video has answered some of the questions for even my loved ones who wanted to know everything that's happened with Adaellah, but also has shown you know, other mothers and parents just how important it is to just watch your child, and how much power you have to make sure that the healthcare professionals can really kind of fulfill their duties, and kind of make sure that your child doesn't become a statistic. If you are going through treatment with your child, if your child unfortunately does have cancer, you can again just contact me. I'm happy to speak to anyone, just to, you know, even if it's just be someone who can understand what they're going through, and kind of be that ear. And again, if there's any knowledge that I have I can pass on, I'll also do that. So happy New Year, and